There. I'm gonna turn it over. I think I'm being asked to behave now because they're about to formally start. There. I'm just very happy to see all of you.
Same here, same here.
And Peter will host the actual lunch after all this craziness is over.
We look forward to that, Amor.
Yes, yes. Okay, guys, thank you. Ting and Ting, we're all yours. Thank you. I think we're just letting everyone in. I apologize. The earlier media briefing ran slightly late. We have the legendary Ateneo professor, Professor Rudy Ang. Sir, I was batch 97, but obviously a very poor student.
I seriously doubt that, but anyway, thank you for describing me as legendary. That's scary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first ever Digital Pilipinas Risky Business Luncheon Series, Teching Up Insurance, along with our partners, the Manila House, the FinTech Philippines Association, the World FinTech Festival, and the Singapore FinTech Festival. We have organized this event, gathering the prominent leaders in the insurance industry to learn and understand the important synergy between innovation and compliance, and how these two work to build together a safer, more resilient environment where our businesses can grow. This three-part event will bring together C-level executives from both the most powerful and the most promising companies from three verticals: insurance, banking, and fintech. Today, we are going to focus on insurance. These discussions are led by Lexus Risk Solutions, a leader in providing customized risk solutions. FinTech Philippines Association, the most inclusive technology trade association in the country. And Geyser Maclang, the convener of Digital Pilipinas and World FinTech Festival Philippines. To give us a brief insight of what will happen in Risky Business Luncheon, Teching Up Insurance, let us welcome Bishol Taneja, Country Manager in the Philippines of Lexisnexis Risk Solutions.
Thank you everyone for joining this session today, this lovely afternoon. My name is Vishal Taneja and I am the country manager for the Philippines here at Lexisnexis, based out of our APAC head office in Singapore. Guys, if you can just turn on the slides, please. Thanks. So as I was saying, thank you very much for taking our time today, right? And we have heard from the voiceover that today we are going to talk about the RegTech innovation within the insurance industry in the Philippines. Over the year, we have seen organizations putting in efforts and emphasis on the regulatory technology and compliance. And this is now a topic of discussions among every other senior industry professionals like yourself. Keeping that in mind, the idea of this session is to initiate a dialogue and provide everyone a safe space to have exchange of ideas, share thoughts, comments, feedbacks, and their observations within the regulatory ecosystem in the insurance industry. With me today, I have, can you go on the next slide, please? With me today from Lexisnexis, I have Johnny Rogerson, who is the Senior Director for Financial Crime Compliance Sales at Asia Pacific, based out of Singapore. We have Doug Wolfson, who is the Director for Financial Crime Compliance Strategy, based out of our Hong Kong office. And then we have Julie Xiao, who is the Head of Sales for the Southeast Asia region for Financial Crime Compliance portfolio. Next slide, please. I'll be kicking off this session with an introduction to Acuity, a Lexisnexis risk solutions company. And then we'll move over to hear from our other esteemed guests on their observations. And then we'll dive into the agenda of this session, which is the 3 E's of money laundering and terrorist financing prevention program. The idea of this session is to make it as interactive as possible. Of course, our speakers at Lexisnexis will initiate that dialogue. However, if there are any questions, comments, or thoughts that you want to point out throughout the session, please feel free to raise your hand and speak. Next slide, please. Up until last year, Acuity and Lexisnexis Solutions, both global leaders in providing KYC and anti-money laundering solutions, were sister companies and part of Relax, a public listed company headquartered in the UK and listed on London and New York Stock Exchange. This year, both companies have merged operations, and together as a Lexisnexis Risk Solutions Group entity, we serve more than 25,000 customers globally in different screening solution portfolio. One of our portfolio is Banker's Almanac suite of solutions, first for payment services that allows financial institutions, including insurance companies, with the accurate and up-to-date financial data to help streamline the payment processes for the claims disbursement and insurance policies. Within the Banker's Almanac solution portfolio itself, we have Banker's Almanac for financial counterparty KYC that allows financial institutions and again insurance companies to identify and verify their financial counterparty and assess the risk as part of their due diligence process. On the other hand, we have financial crime compliance suite of solutions that allows insurance companies to manage their sanctions risk and comply with the regulations, in a sense, to help deter and prevent money laundering and terrorist financing activities, coupled with our global regulatory technology data that includes sanctions list, negative media, and politically exposed person database. Next slide, please. On this screen, you can see some of our insurance clients that we constantly work with and engage throughout the globe. Next slide, please. As a company, Lexisnexis Risk Solutions started its focus in the APAC market over a decade ago. And since then, we have a team of over 200 employees sitting in different offices, regional offices within APAC, constantly working and engaging with our customers and partners, helping them with the world-class scaling solutions in ensuring their journey towards building a culture of compliance and mitigating sanctions risk. Next slide, please. Our investment in the Philippines also goes a long way back. It started in 2013. We have been heavily involved with the BFSI sector since then, currently engaged and work with over 40 companies to help mitigate money laundering and terrorist financing activities. These companies again come from a different industries ranging from traditional commercial banks to non-banking industries, including casino, gambling, financing companies, insurance, so on and so forth. In fact, our regional center of excellence office is based out of Manila, Philippines, where that handles our first level of support and provide guidance to all our customers in the APAC region. As part of our company's community development initiatives and to build a culture of compliance, we constantly engage with regulators and associations to drive the best practices and knowledge sharing sessions. For example, last year, we worked with the Association of Bank Compliance Officers in the Philippines to share best practices, global best practices on sanctions risk mitigation. Similarly, this year, we are in active conversations with the regulatory supervision and compliance departments in the Anti-Money Laundering Council, the FIU of Philippines, to work towards building the trade-based money laundering framework by sharing our global best practices that we have learned while working with some of the global institutions. That is all from my side. Just want to ensure it once again. Hope you find this session productive And please feel free to engage in discussion by sharing your thoughts and comments. Thank you once again for taking our time today, and I hope you enjoy the lunch as well. Over to the host. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. To get things started, let us all welcome the governing body of insurance in the country, the Philippine Insurers and Reinsurers Association, led by none other than Chairman Alan Santos.
There you go. Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Well, again, good afternoon, everyone, friends in the insurance industry, guests. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Amor for sponsoring and hosting this lunch meeting. We in PIRA truly admire Amor's dedication and passion to promote and spur technological innovation in the insurance industry. And with the ongoing pandemic and the worsening impact of climate change, we in the insurance industry need to step up in our role in mitigating risks and helping faster recovery from disasters or unforeseen events. And what better way can we do that but through technology and innovation? Allow me to share my thoughts on 3 potential areas where technology can have a huge impact. One area is in the area of data gathering and processing. Next is in digital sales and servicing. And third would be in claims processing and payments. In the area of data gathering and processing, PIRA, as a rating organization, needs data from its members in order to fulfill its role in developing and updating the tariffs or premium rate schedules. But our experience is it's very difficult to get data from members. And what we've been hearing is there are 2 reasons for that. One, many companies struggle to provide the needed data because they say that their systems do not capture the data. So that's one. Second, other companies do not want to provide us data because of concerns regarding confidentiality and privacy of data. So essentially 2 concerns, confidentiality and capability. I'll move on to the next area where technology can be of great support, digital sales and servicing. I think next to affordability and insurance awareness, reaching customers is probably one of the most important factors in increasing insurance penetration and reducing the protection gap. And with technology, the opportunity to reach and service millions of unserved Filipinos is a real opportunity or possibility. So hopefully, the tech experts here can help us in this area. And then third is in the area of claims processing and payments. And the goal here is, of course, faster and more efficient claims processing. Maybe we can have smart systems also that can help the prevention of fraud. I tell you, PIRA has a motor claims insurance system. The idea is to gather the claims data so we can detect and potentially prevent fraud. However, the adoption rate of this system within PIRA is very low. And we're trying to understand where the problem lies. Is it because the system itself is not user friendly? It's not easy to use, or is it because the systems of our members are not set up well enough so as to integrate or talk to this system that PIRA has set up? So maybe that's a challenge that we can try to solve also. So I guess in short, I identified 3 pain points or opportunities for improvement through technology and innovation. So namely data gathering and processing, digital sales and servicing, claims processing, and payments. So, well, finally, on behalf of PIRA, I just want to express our appreciation and excitement about our collaboration with PLIA and FinTech Philippines. We look forward to working together with you on creating a more responsive, innovative, and techy insurance industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Allen. And we hope that this event would thrust risk compliance into the greater awareness of the various relevant industry stakeholders. The next part of our program will discuss insurtech and health tech in the Philippines and why these developments are critical not just to the development of our industries, but will also be beneficial to many of our countrymen. To talk more about this is none other than Amor Maclang, convener of Digital Pilipinas, co-founder of Geyser Maclang Marketing Communications Incorporated, and the current executive director of the FinTech Philippines Association. To join her as reactors, we have some of the biggest names in the insurance industry. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ms. Amor Maclang.
Hi, Sadie. Thank you very much. And Alan, my partner in this industry, thank you very, very much. Please don't believe anything that he said, because friends have a way of making you sound more important than you truly are. But seriously, when I first spoke to Mr. Ankit Sharma and Mr. Ken Lam of Lexisnexis Risk Solutions, they of course know me from my fintech work and my work in technology. But I couldn't help talk to them about how I've really been truly impressed by how the members of the insurance space, and Alan, George, Mitch, you know this, I've been very vocal about it, how you guys have truly opened to an outsider whose biggest advocacy is really to work and help tech up the Philippines one industry at a time. So what I'd like to do very, very quickly is to walk you through very quickly a few slides of what we hope to launch hopefully in October in the ASEAN Insurance Summit, and also in the Singapore FinTech Festival in November, what is possibly the first Insurance and Health Tech Association of the Philippines, with your support. Next slide, please. So I remember important dates have a way of really being seared in your head. Was it, Alan, August of 2019, when I received an invite from PIRA to join the InsurTech event, and at that time, aside from our good friend Mr. Roy Miklat, who is one of the founding fathers of insurance for the cooperative sector, who's also here today, I knew very little about PIRA and PLIA. But my goodness, it has been a very intense ride since, that unfortunately was just cut short by COVID. And a lot of our coming together was over great food and great drinks and even shameless karaoke, right, Peter and Alan? And I promised to myself, and I made this vow to many of the leadership who are here, that FinTech Philippines Association and our organization will continue to support PLIA and PIRA and the insurance industry in general in teching up this very important industry. That promise was slightly sidetracked with COVID. Remember, guys, this was February of 2020, February 28th, I think, of 2020. I don't know why I have all these useless dates in my head, but at that time, 16 days after the lockdown happened, it was supposed to be a gathering much like this one, over great food and learning, hosted by Manulife. It was supposed to be for less than 100 people. 300 people turned up. And I told my leadership in the FinTech Society, led by our chairman, who unfortunately could not be here today, Dr. Tito Ortiz, I said, I'm sorry, but the insurance industry, in terms of co-opetition and cooperation, many of us in the banking and the fintech sector cannot hold a candle to it. So, next slide, please. We made a commitment to each other that we are going to together tech up the industry across very important legacy businesses: insurance, health, government, regulation, property, and as you'll see later, we have some multiple sandboxes. Next slide, please. We created a regional runway that includes the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the guidance of the MAS, and also at the same time, APIN and AFIX, APIX and AFIN, which I will discuss with you later. Next slide, please. Our objective is actually not just to bring together the players in the insurance industry, but in a whole of government and in a whole of society approach, bring in the telemedicine, the health tech players, the Philippine government. Many of you know that I advise the Department of Health as a communications advisor for the COVID response. The UP College of Public Health has agreed to be part of this coming together to provide technical expertise. Next slide. So what is Digital Pilipinas? Digital Pilipinas is basically a movement that brings together many of the leaders in the industry. Next slide, please. As we take on some of the most important problems in the industry. I'm not going to go through all, but this is basically, next slide, covered by three things: education and mass adoption. So Alan mentioned earlier that we have the tools and we have the mindset. How come we don't have enough mass adoption? So that's part and parcel of what we hope to do. The second part is all about sandboxes. So we have brazenly stolen this successful concept from the regulators in the banking and the fintech space. Both are Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and also the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Things that are otherwise not supported by regulation can now find a fun place to play in under the aegis and the auspices. Sorry, I had to say aegis because I'm so starstruck. Professor Rudy Ang, who I only hope to become a teacher before, is here in the audience. Probably the most important business professor in the country. So under the purview of regulators, what we hope is to actually come up with multiple experiments. And please allow me to share with you what we're doing this year. First and foremost, we have a program called Business Without Borders. How do we take retailers in the Philippines and e-commerce and launch the search for the Pinoy e-commerce superstar? So whether you are a legacy business like Rustan's, or you're starting off in e-commerce selling 10 units of lipstick a day, this is in partnership with APIX and AFIN, Proxtera of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the Department of Trade and Industry, and some of the biggest players in the payments, in the financing space. The second that we're going to launch in September is the Proptech Consortium of the Philippines, also led by Dr. Tito Ortiz, and one of my most admired technology collaborators, Mr. Ron Hos. Our chairman here is Ms. Emma Imperial, one of the leading champions for real estate as it pertains to mass housing. So how do we move money? How do we move technologies in a legacy industry like real estate? We also have a sandbox with the Department of Energy. We're going to be studying how, in a closed loop system, we can generate and perhaps sell energy to each other using the blockchain. On the fourth level, we would like to thank Microsoft for sending our way multiple education credits that we hope to distribute for free to many of our constituencies. And Alan, Benedict, Mitch, and George, we want to be able to provide free technology education, especially for this nascent InsurTech and Health Tech Association. Environment and sustainability will not be left behind. With the support of UBX, Globe, KMG, and the Philippine Native Plant Conservation Society, we're looking at teching up and tokenizing carbon footprints of many companies who want to lower their emissions. Diversity and inclusion is something very important to us. So is gaming. And if any of you are gamers, please follow me on a Switch. Song of Samarkand. Do you know, guys, that it's not Hidlin Diaz who first put us in the global map for competition? Not even Manny Pacquiao? Do you know that teams like League of Legends and Mobile Legends have actually put the Philippines in the map? And very few people recognize the importance of what these gamers are doing. There is even a gaming technology called Axie Infinity, and the kind of revenue that they've made in crypto, a new asset class, has exceeded the remittance of OFWs coming from Hong Kong. Last but not the least, and this is where really the role of Lexisnexis risk solutions really come into play. Together with the Department of National Defense, we're going to be launching Protect Pinas, which is a whole of nation and a whole of society approach to cyber defense and cyber security. So this afternoon, unfortunately, I couldn't find a way to get you the famous gin and tonic in Manila House, because some of you said it's against the religion to drink during daytime. So we want to thank Lexisnexis Risk Solutions for allowing us to come together once again as an industry in the hope of being a health tech and an insurtech association. So the final thing that we hope to be able to do together is actually collective legislation and regulation. I was having a chat with a partner and friend, Miss Noemi Azura of In Life, and she said, Amor, is there a way for us to be able to expedite approvals with the regulatory bodies? Certain sachet products, would it have to take 6 months? Can we not instead perhaps have something pre-formed and pre-approved? So those are some of the things that we hope with the leaders in this industry to do with you. One of the things she did mention also, and in many of my conversations with Alan and Mitch and George, how do we bring the best and the brightest talents from all over the world to weigh in and support our local players especially? We have here some of our partners. I'm honored that some of our important CEOs, Rahul, thank you. I know you're on holiday. Lee Hao, thank you so much for being here today, and many others of our important leaders in the industry. But we're primarily doing this so that our local players can be in equal footing with some of the largest foreign players who are also members of our association. You guys have a playbook to follow, but here, our local players were left primarily to fend on our own. And my commitment to PIRA and PLIA is that that will not be the case. Our culture of innovation through multiple sandboxes and projects will carry on. Can we go to the last slide, please? Because I wanted to show what we can hope to expect. Thank you. For those of us who are here today, as we put together the InsurTech and Health Tech Association, first would be, how do we direct more investments, tech or otherwise, into the space? We've seen what I call the reverse diaspora of some of the best and the brightest talents from all over the world moving to Southeast Asia and choosing to domicile themselves in Indonesia and the Philippines. Collaboration and co-opetition. I mentioned to Alan and also to Mitch and George that we are going to run a hackathon, but virtually this time. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather the pain points of the industry so we can minimize the kind of spend that you put in technology and collectivize the sharing of knowledge and information. The sandboxes that we're doing for the other industries, we hope to be able not just to do with our regulators in the IC, but how do we cross-pollinate insurance and health with other industries, perhaps like, I don't know, gaming to talk to millennials, or edutech perhaps. Policy, we talked about coming up with new rules and regulations that will be chipped away as we continue to innovate in this space. I remember a good friend and a supporter of the industry, Mr. George Royeca of Angkas. Basically, they were undergoing regulatory challenges because the laws that govern Angkas are close to 50 years old. And when they, in the law, when they refer to two wheels, they meant the kalesa. I am not kidding. So we need to come together and work towards a blueprint for digital Pilipinas. And last but not the least, which is why we're here today, I would like to thank our partners from Lexisnexis Risk Solutions. Remember, Ankit and Ken, I said, after this craziness is over, we're going to have risky dinners, risky business bar hopping, risky business whiskey appreciation. On this note, I would like to thank all of our partners and maybe hear a bit from some of the leaders in the insurance industry as to what their expectations are from a health tech and an insurtech association. Alan, Mitch, Benedict, maybe if you guys would like to start just to get the ball rolling.
Maybe I'll start. Although I've covered some in my comments already earlier, really what we're hoping here is we can leverage the expertise and the available technology that is out there, that is available within the reach of FinTech Philippines, to I guess help the industry in those areas that I mentioned. These are current pain points within the industry, and obviously by working together, not only can we save on costs, but we can put our heads and brains together to come up with real life solutions that will make the industry more responsive, more innovative, and more exciting.
Thank you so much, Alan. I got you. Sales, claims, and data gathering. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I hope you didn't regret having invited me last August 2019. Thanks, Alan.
Not really, not really.
Not really, just a bit. Hi, Sir Roy. Mr. Roy Miklat. Okay, I always say that one of the unspoken unicorns in the country is actually collectively the insurance and industry. Good to see you, Sir Roy.
Hi, good to see you, More. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, for cooperatives, these are the should I say the most, if not the most conservative, but the conservative organizations in the country. But basically, they are self-help organizations, and taking them up is really quite a challenge. But this pandemic has enhanced or hastened their adoption for technology. We have launched last April during the pandemic the Digico ecosystem that we have developed. And I guess FinTech Philippines can help the cooperatives by linking them up to other FinTech or other service providers outside of the insurance industry. And I agree with Alan that we should consolidate data and information that can help not only the cooperatives but the whole industry, because there's a lot to be. We have a lot to do in terms of risk protection and mitigation, particularly the low-income groups in the country. Lastly, together with PIRA, we are piloting one of the parametric insurance, and one CISP is diving into this because we need it among cooperatives. So hopefully, if Fintech Pilipinas can help us popularize parametric insurance in the country, that will benefit a lot of MSMEs in the countryside and the barangays in our country. So that's how we have done it in the last 18 months of pandemic, and it really helped us to adapt digitalization of cooperatives. Sometimes crisis can help you respond to the needs of our constituents that you haven't imagined that you can do it in 18 months when we have projected it in 3 years. That's what we have done, Amor, during the pandemic.
Maraming salamat, Sir Ray. And whenever I give talks in the region and they say that the Philippines is unbanked, I tell them that most of the money is actually with the cooperatives. Maraming salamat po. Wonderful. At this point, may we call on Mr. Rico Bautista of Etica?
Basically, I would like to give my comments based on, I guess, the issues on money laundering and terrorism financing and other cyber crimes. And I think there are questions like, how do we balance the need for innovation in our industry and the challenges presented by all of these? I believe the innovation in the industry will continue to flourish without sacrificing the need to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing, cyber crimes, and other online fraudulent activities. Technology can help companies mitigate the rise of these. And certain technology solutions can be put in place to be able to detect those anomalous transactions. Just like, for example, in our company, we're looking at automating how do we do, the UN sanction list, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, World Check, so that we'll be able to do the proper KYC of our individual clients. And then in the area of creating the culture of compliance, I believe compliance versus innovation, I believe compliance and innovation are not two opposing ideas or thoughts. In fact, in our industry, the Insurance Commission has already set certain guidelines on how companies can engage into innovation projects and come up with sandbox approaches on certain initiatives. It's a matter of knowing the opportunities at hand and what technology approaches will be used to seize the opportunities. Emerging opportunities that would need regulation should involve the regulators, and our experience is that the regulators are supportive and open to look into these emerging opportunities. So Amor, those are just some of my thoughts in this discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mr. Rico Francisco of InLife, we'd like to hear from you. InLife is one of our co-conveners in Digital Pilipinas, sir.
Thank you, Amor. I'm Ronnie Francisco from the HMO subsidiary of Insular Life. Okay, for the HMO industry, we've seen recently a significant increase in the awareness by the buying public on the importance of having healthcare coverage. And we've seen this when the pandemic began last year. And they buy regardless of product type, whether simple or those that are complicated. As long as they have coverage, they buy. And they buy through mobile app, through the e-store of the website of the providers, and even the traditional distribution channel as well. And along with this, given the availability of technology across all market segments, we've seen recent increase in the demands for automated processes and availability of interactive online facilities for our members, client companies, and even our partners from the medical industry, the doctors, specialists, clinics, and hospitals. And also, as you know, a lot of people now are using teleconsultation or telemedicine as a way to seek primary care at the comfort of their home. So we've included that in our system as well. And there's also the emergence of one-time sachet type, as you mentioned earlier. This provides emergency coverage, and this can be mass marketed and available through digital platform or through API integration with various affinity partners and even bank assurance channel. And given this line of business, we see so much potential from this. In fact, in our case, the prepaid or the sachet type line of business grew from 2% 2 years ago to 25% of our business as of last year of 2020. So to make this successful and to capitalize on the recent trends while maximizing both the bottom line and the top line, we want to speed to market in terms of product approvals. So, and included in our wish list is for the regulation to have faster and flexible TAT in terms of approval. Maybe the regulation can look at the possibility of scaling the requirements depending on the type of products or risk components of the product, or probably based on the price range and the manner it is distributed to the market. So requirements can be scaled down if the products are simpler, especially those products that are sold through digitally. So where underwriting is simplified and pre-approved. From the actuarial point of view, there's not much actuarial assumptions needed on the asset share projection for these types of products. So maybe the regulation can look at simplifying this in the future. And another suggestion that we can share is to also to prepare a standard and simpler terms and condition without legalese and insurance jargon. I think this is one way to expand our reach to all market segments. And then the next one is, well, this is one of the burning issues, which is the KYC requirements. The regulator may look at simplifying this or do away with many reports because for HMO, the amounts are relatively small and not likely channel for money laundering. And I think that's it from the HMO side.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. I really appreciate it. Of all the things that you did say, I just want to make note of one thing, which is the opening up of each other's APIs, right?
Yeah.
I know that that's something that you're already doing on the Union Bank and the in-life side of things. But guys, I cannot emphasize enough. I can tell that Ronnie is as geeky as I am when it comes to these things. My eyes really lit up when he said API. Guys, APIs are the language of love. That's the only way we can trade in a digital economy. So maraming salamat. Tama, Ronnie, for raising that important point. Now, before we move on to the closing of the InsurTech and Health Tech discussion, I would like to hear from our leadership from PLIA PIRA. Before I do that, may I call on Mr. Peter Coyuto, who just celebrated his birthday this week. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter. Are you still in the call? Remember, we were talking about
Okay.
Hi, Peter.
So Amor will be sending your dessert. You should all be receiving it at 6 o'clock tonight. All right. If you don't receive it, just message Amor. Okay, all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Peter,
Happy birthday.
We were talking about InsurTech. Remember the association when we were together the last time. What do you hope for us to do? What can we do? How can we serve the industry more, sir?
Just ask all my students here, si Rico, si Alan, si Benedict, they all learn from me. If they need anything, they'll let me know. Oh, Rico,
are you admitting that you're older than them, Peter? Is that what you're
Benedict,
basically saying?
Andiyan ba si Benedict?
Yeah, I'm here.
Actually, he's closing. Benedict is closing.
Benedict, Benedict, I'm formally announcing the next president of the Philippine Life Insurance Association is Rico Bautista.
Yay! Actually, thank you.
Si
Thank you for
Rico,
moving the meeting to
si Rico,
accommodate.
si Rico keep on complaining about Benedict kasi. So I'm taking Benedict out.
Why did you
Guys,
invite
this is-
Peter, Amor?
This is a foretaste of how it is to be with them. All of my times with the gentlemen in the society, amazing. Sorry, since you put Benedict on the spot, right? I'll send you the bill for the dessert, Peter. I'll send you the bill for the dessert. Mr. Mr. Benedict Season, yes.
The true #1 company. Don't believe the fake news coming out from Pure UK. #1 pa rin ang Sun Life under Benedict.
Oy, bad si Peter, bad. Okay, Mr. Benedict.
Fake news. Rico,
Mr. Benedict Season,
fake news yung
yes.
Pure UK?
Oy! Ano ka ba, Peter? You're so funny.
Si Rico,
Our
Okay.
president, our president of PLIA. Maraming
Wala, end of
salamat,
comment
Mr. George.
Thank you.
Nina of
Enjoy my dessert.
PLIA, who actually moved their meeting to accommodate this meeting. Maraming salamat. Let's hear from the man of the hour, Mr. Benedict Season of PLIA, our president from PLIA.
Okay, thank you very much, Amor. And of course, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon also to Peter, of course. It's really a pleasure to be invited to this forum. And I guess Alan, Roy, Rico, Ronnie, they've actually said it all. But I'd like to tell you that the Philippine Life Insurance Association, or PLIA, fully supports the agenda of the InsurTech and Health Tech Association of the Philippines. The challenges posed by this pandemic actually reinforce the position of the life insurance industry with regards to the value of investing in business continuity and digital readiness. Whereas before, such were considered as optional and deferrable. It was normally the case when it would give way to other project allocations treated with greater significance in terms of capability to provide immediate and concrete corporate results. But now, because of their criticality and urgency, they are viewed as effective business enablers. The industry has actually realized that embracing digital allows businesses to continue and even thrive amid market uncertainties, like this COVID-19 pandemic, which we have been contending with for about 16 to 18 months now. Companies which had put in place robust business continuity infrastructure and planned their digital transformation journey even before this pandemic are actually reaping the fruits of being forward-minded. For example, companies that adopted Republic Act 11165, also known as the Telecommuting Act, became the leaders in quickly activating a work-from-home arrangement with their workers. The other companies had to scramble to put their respective setup in place to cope with the speed of the new ways of doing business in a remote operating model. And this experience is really a call to action for the whole life insurance industry. It is to recognize technological innovations and the disruptive changes happening in the marketplace. We really need to take deliberate measures now, measures that will transform our business to be more responsive to such changes. And these opportunities will touch several aspects of the life insurance industry, from client empowerment to client analytics, to distribution, risk management, servicing, operational efficiency, and even talent development. The challenge before us now is how to move faster and how to accelerate our adoption response. Going into such a transformation journey is no longer an imagined aspiration. It has become a strategic imperative to ensure the industry's path to continuous expansion, growth, and development. So it is high time to reinvent our business, or maybe high time to reimagine our business to be in sync with the changing operating landscape in terms of required innovative models, shifting technologies, and changing client expectations. PLIA would really be very fortunate to have the InsurTech and HealthTech Association guiding and collaborating with the industry to make this happen. Thus, Amor, we fully support the agenda of what you're doing for the industry. Hope that helps.
Maraming salamat po. And like I committed to Noemi, I was chatting with her. For the first year of those who are joining, we're going to waive fees. Sabi naman nila, Amor, our executive time is even more expensive than the fees. But on that note, maraming salamat po. Before I turn it over to Ms. Edith Yongson, one of the most important people in the fintech and the financial services space, may we hear from our two partners, Mr. George Mina and Mr. Mitch Relosa. If not for them, this would not be made possible. Sir George and Sir Mitch, maybe a few closing words po.
George, you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. Amor, thank you. I'd like to pick up two items from your talk. One is appreciation and the inclusion of the healthcare, of health insurance.
No? Si George Mina pala.
Boss Peter, makinig ka. Because
may tawag pala si ano, no? May tawag ata si Erwin eh.
Given the pandemic, it has become a natural education for the public, no? To get a better appreciation of the value of insurance and both life, health, given the threats to their life and health. No? Since what you mentioned about a greater focus the local companies, no? Because we recognize that our multinational companies are able to get access to technical expertise and resources from their regional or head offices. And the insurance industry, being a highly conservative industry, is weighed down by largely legacy operating environment, no? And that makes it difficult for us to easily ride on the disruptions and the technological trends, no? So in this regard, I'd like to emphasize 2 points with respect to support to our local companies. First, as we are trying to do in our association, the concept of being able to help out smaller companies to be able to have access to services on a more affordable basis by approaching it on a industry or group level engagement rather than standalone, no? Makes it more affordable to them. And in this regard, we can access on the partnerships that you and your partners have, no? Accessibility to technical services and solutions, no? That can make transformation of the smaller companies into digital more affordable. The second one is how do we, as I pointed out last time in our dialogue, how do we make it more appreciable in more concrete terms to the small companies? What a digital transformation journey would look like to them? What would they have to be, what are the demands to them insofar as organizational and financial resources are concerned? How can they approach it on a phased-in basis to make it, they could plan it better and plan their supporting resources better. That's one area that I would like to seek your help on, so that we can make them see as how our multinational member companies have shown that certain changes could be made on how we do things in the insurance industry, and this could be very beneficial to the companies as well as to the public that they serve. Thank you, Amar.
Mabuhay po ang PLIA. Thank you. Sir Mitch?
Thank you, More. Well, taking up the industry is a no-brainer, as evidenced by the ongoing pandemic, which pushed the insurance off the cliff to rush headlong into the respective digitalization journeys. Various PIRA member companies were in different stages, of course, but the common ground was to improve client servicing remotely while not sacrificing their company compliance requirements. By and large, our members were able to meet the challenge of this, and this brings us to the next step. How do we tech up the industry to improve their operations via technology, and not only to be able to operate as usual? For example, since the industry is now reviewing the premium rates of our major classes of business, perhaps it could go all the way and change the way we underwrite. Let me give you a specific example, FASTLA. Now we rate or charge a premium according to the make, model, and age of a motor vehicle. But there is a better, more realistic and equitable way of doing that through technology, where the driving habits of a driver are the ones considered, plus how long the car is actually used on the road. Data gathered, for a lack of better term, a black box of the car can be used to rate more appropriately. This is just one in the dozens of examples. No? But hopefully, with the help of Amor and her team and her collaborators around the region, we could make the digitalization journey of the insurance industry a fast, efficient, and relatively painless one. So it's a no-brainer, Amor. Everything that you're doing is recognized, and we as an industry are there to support you. Thank you.
You'll always be the supporter and the younger sister of PLIA, PIRA as we tech up the industry. Mabuhay at maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. I turn it over to you, Miss Ida.
Thank you, Amor, and our esteemed reactors for the insights about the current challenges and solutions in the insurtech and health tech scenes in the country. There are a lot of takeaways that we can apply to our own companies, and certainly the PLIA and PIRA can definitely become two of the cornerstones that would enable us to go further in this space. Now, to moderate the next discussion, let us welcome Ms. Ida Tiongson, Trustee of the FinTech Philippines Association.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Glad to be back from the media briefing to this. I'm glad to be moderating this panel. And incidentally, Mr. Peter, I'm also a board director of PruLife UK. I just thought I would mention that. Yeah, and just to qualify, definitely Sun Life's number one as far as income. PruLife is just a little bit in terms of the number one as far as new business. And of course, when it comes to asset and when it comes to net worth is the Philippine American Life. So there you go.
George Mina will rebut.
Okay, that's according to the Insurance Commission, by the way. So there you go.
You must admit, mas guapo si Benedict kaysa kay Jumping. No more.
I have not seen, well, we'll see in a little while. Okay, so let me see. Okay, our first topic is something that calls for attention to the risk of money laundering and terrorism financing. One solution and response to the threats of white-collar crime and fraud is regulatory compliance. According to Lexisnexis' own report, the Lexisnexis true cost of Financial Crime Compliance Study for the Philippines 2020, the overall cost of the Philippine organizations succumbing to these criminal crimes last year alone, reaching a staggering $690 million. To expound on the 3 E's of Money Laundering Terrorism Prevention Program, or MLTFPP, is the Senior Director for Financial Crime Compliance Apex Sales for Lexisnexis Risk Solutions, Mr. Jonathan Rogerson. Joining later in the panel discussion are leaders Li Hao Zhuang. How can I make a mistake? I've moderated a few. Li Hao Zhuang, CEO of FWD Philippines. We have Attorney M. Valiente, the Senior Vice President and Chief Legal Government Relations Officer of PruLife UKPH. And we have Rahul Hora, President and CEO of AXA Philippines. So to start off, please welcome again Mr. Jonathan Rogerson.
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon now. It is afternoon now. I think we started earlier this morning.
It is afternoon, yes.
Thank you very much, Ida. And also thank you very much everybody who's in this session, not just in this discussion that we're about to kickstart here. There's been some fantastic dialogue so far today as part of the media briefing, and then also coming into this broader discussion today. Just before I maybe get into this topic of the 3 E's and something that we look at when we look at that effective, money laundering, terrorist financing prevention program, and we get into more of those AMLA requirements. I just want to sort of maybe echo a few things that were mentioned earlier. One thing that really struck me as Benedict spoke just towards the end of the last session, where we're really looking at how we tech up within the industry across the many areas, whether that's an insurtech, health tech. I think what we're going to start to venture into with this discussion here is a bit more on the risk management. And obviously that's where a role of RegTech plays a part, but it's not the only thing, and that's one of the key parts of this discussion. It's going to be around the people and the processes and the culture that are very much around that. And what's really interesting to think about today, this forum, I mean, you look at it, we're all about 50 odd people online having a great dialogue, a great discussion. Would this have happened as easily or as quickly pre-COVID? I'm not so sure, right? We used to also travel a lot to our respective client markets and vice versa. And sometimes that slowed down the process of these discussions or the speed of these discussions. And I foresee as we come out of this post-pandemic era in the future, I think this new way of working is really going to speed up that process. So whether it's risk management, operational efficiency, or talent development are 3 of the points that Benedict mentioned. I think this also comes back into the discussion that I'm going to kickstart here around money laundering and terrorism prevention program. So without further ado, I'll maybe take it into the discussion itself. If someone could maybe put the slides up, I'll give a bit of an introduction. And what I'm going to do here is, it's really a discussion now. So I'm going to very much present an idea, and then I'm going to hand it to my respective panelists with Rahul, and Li Hao, and thank you very much for your time, to also maybe share some of their views, thoughts, insights around this. So moving into what are the 3 E's. So on the next slide, if you can just populate those, thank you very much. So one of the first of the 3 E's is obviously very important. And I think this starts from the beginning of any journey that you're on with respect to anti-money laundering and terrorist finance and prevention. It is what is effectiveness. And for us, it's really about describing the ability of that prevention program to understand and detect risks through a combination of those 3 pillars I mentioned earlier, which is people, processes, and technology. Now, given some of the speakers we have today as well to help support this discussion, I'm sure this people and process is going to be a big part of what they consider alongside that technology. As we move into the second E of the 3 E's, it really is around efficiency. And obviously, I think effectiveness will never go away when it looks towards a prevention program on money laundering and terrorist financing. But as that journey progresses, and as some of the topics we've discussed today, as the speed of this journey also increases, this is also where efficiency becomes quite an integral part of that effectiveness program. So it really is around enabling effective compliance with the AML or CFT regulations in the most cost-effective manner possible, whilst also utilizing the most optimal amount of resources for that. And, you know, there's not a huge amount of time here today to maybe get into a deep dive on it, but that can even be about how your resources, with the ability of technology alongside people and processes, how those people can actually start into much higher value, you know, tasks, which can add a much more effectiveness to the overall program as well. And the third E of these three E's is really around explainability. And I'm not going to deep dive on explainability today, but again, as part of this journey that you go on, it really is about how you as an organization, how you, your people and teams, even your management teams, really demonstrate a thorough understanding of those money laundering or terrorist prevention program itself and the customer due diligence process that goes into that, but being able to articulate that to your regulators, to your auditors. And before I maybe move into opening this discussion up and getting some views, I think that's where it's really, really important here, where we really think about the why, right? What is the why of the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2001? And also, you know, in your space in the Philippines, you've got some fantastic support already from the Insurance Commission, where they've given a guideline related to the AMLA Act. But how does this really relate to you as regulated entities on your journey towards that risk prevention? And you can see even from 2018 guidance through to a recircular and amendment in 2019 from the Insurance Commission in Philippines, it is evolving fast, but it's also evolving in a very interesting way. It's where it's really around that effectiveness and explainability and focusing on the outcomes rather than it being a tick box exercise alongside risk. So if I really go into the discussion itself and maybe open the floor to some of our esteemed guests today, if we move on to the next slide, this will help you also think about your responses maybe initially. The first question that I really want to ask, and it's kind of two parts to the question. If we just populate the slide, it really is looking at those three key pillars that I've just mentioned, or three key focus areas of a prevention program of the three E's. If you know you had to really pick one of those three E's, whether it's effectiveness, whether it's efficiency, or whether it's explainability, which one do you, from your perspective, where you are maybe in your journey right now, would prioritize as number one? That's the first part. And why would that be there as a prioritization? So maybe if I open up the discussion and maybe if I pick potentially Rahul, would you be happy to start and share your thoughts on that? And please do ask if you need any more guidance as well.
Sure. Thank you very much. Am I audible and clear?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, you know, going back to your question, in my opinion, I think it's really the effectiveness, which we are prioritizing, would want to prioritize. And the reason is quite simple, because I think it's one of the most comprehensive aspects, and it has a lot of elements that, and as an organization, we need to work on, which is, as you rightly mentioned, people, process, technology. You know, I think, and the reason why I say effectiveness in order to expand a little bit more is, one, we had a very long discussion in the first half on how, you know, we need to digitally enable our businesses, so that particular journey that each organization needs to take in opens up more and more, you know, possibilities of gaps, and hence, you know, we need to ensure that we are able to keep pace of the compliance and the regulatory aspect and the AML aspect, so that it goes hand in hand with all the other, you know, initiatives around innovation that we are all focusing on. So our organizations are going through a huge change in the coming months and years, and hence we need to ensure that we bring the regulatory aspect, you know, along with it, and hence the effectiveness is extremely important. And I think the other aspect is the journey that we need to bring our own employees, you know, through this, because we need to start positioning our compliance teams, our risks teams, more as partners, you know, to our business people, which I think is again a very important aspect of the change that we have to, you know, undergo. And so going back to your question and a quick answer, I would choose effectiveness as the most important E at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Rahul. Some great initial thoughts. Before maybe I add anything in response to some of your remarks, perhaps I can maybe pass it to Li Hao. what would be your number one priority right now? And it's absolutely fine to also have the same priority here in this discussion as well.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you very much. I got this question maybe about 2 hours ago before the meeting starts, right? I've been thinking around about it. Actually, I've been talking offline with my Chief AMLA officer, Roy, as well. And it's hard to pinpoint just one, right? Because the three has to work in concert. You can't just say, we just focus on one. I mean, since the pandemic has started, the whole notion of risk have changed, right? Our existing understanding of risk has changed from anti-terrorism and money laundering to the way we run the business, to paying higher claims, right? So I think it's really critical that we understand, number one, what the main purpose of money laundering and terrorist financing prevention has to come in. I think where FWD has been making significant progress is actually marrying that three that you have talked about in people, right? In process and in technology. So we have introduced a number of technology measures since the beginning of last year. For example, our automated underwriting program that we have installed that actually help us auto underwrite a large part of our policies, actually have a lot of AML questions already built in. So that actually helps us, and we're continuing the upgrading our systems to yesterday we just had a meeting to see how we can better predict and report covered transactions, right? Not just on new businesses, but ongoing transactions that we have with the customer. So this area is actually, it's critical towards having a better understanding. Now, the other part that we have put significant amount of resources in, it's actually leadership from the top, that voice from the top, as well as continual education to our staff. We have constant training, as well as we have risk surveys that we put out so that people actually know what is involved. I think that carries through both effectiveness and explainability. So it's really hard for me to put, but if I have to choose to downsize anyone, I think maybe efficiency part, because this is not the time to scale back the investment, right? Because the cost of non-compliance, the cost of breach, both to operations, to reputation, it's increasing exponentially. So while we everyone in the insurance industry is trying to cut expenses to stay profitable, but this is one area I don't think we would be cutting off. So yeah, it's kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, but I hope it gives some flavor of the things that we do.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate your response there, Lee Hao. And maybe just to squeeze in a final response on this before we maybe go into another area of effectiveness. Can we maybe open it to Emran? Do you have a view? And it might very well be that you have a similar view here, given that 2 out of 3 so far have touched on effectiveness, but please do share.
Okay, so if we did have to rank in order of priority, our number one would be effectiveness. I think because this reflects the overall strength and success of the controls. We have to combat money laundering and terrorist financing activities. It will serve as an indicator of how robust our AML and anti-terrorist financing program is with respect to the prevention of the usage of our insurance products for such unlawful activities. So to us, it is an imperative to focus on continuously assessing and reassessing the overall effectiveness of our money laundering and terrorist financing prevention program vis-a-vis the changing ML and TF risks, business strategies, and regulatory landscape.
Thanks, for adding that. Look, it's actually not so much of a surprise to me that the three of you have all actually selected effectiveness as that number one priority. When we have to really ask you, if you had to pick, what would you pick? And I think what was the common theme from the three of your discussions is effectiveness stands there as part of those three. And funny enough, I think efficiency and explainability are facets that would maybe go into those people, process, and technology pillars of effectiveness. So it absolutely makes sense to me that your number one focus right now is effectiveness. And and obviously, please do share if you have any different insights when we go into the next part of this discussion. But also, when I reflect on where we are when it comes to money laundering and terrorist financing risks, you know, a lot of the regulation has been in place, say 20 years ago, has been predominantly focused on those traditional banks, traditional financial services operators, whether that's in the Philippines or in the rest of the region or globally. Now, what's been extremely interesting is, and I think it was also mentioned in some of the discussion earlier, the criminals themselves, they are always looking to move one step ahead and be that one step ahead. And they're continually innovating themselves, these organized crime groups that are trying to facilitate human trafficking, illegal wildlife trade, terrorist financing, and all of these other risks associated. They're always looking to be one step ahead. Now, what's interesting is on the back of COVID and that rapid digitization, and also how some of the other global bodies like OFAC, the UN Security Council, alongside, you know, local bodies like BSP and the Insurance Commission and AMLC, etc. I think we're at a stage from our experience where you are coming in as an insurance company where there is a bit more oversight on these risks, but you're coming into this, you know, where there really is a great opportunity to look at that broader, holistic, how can technology alongside this really add a lot of benefit to the process. So if I move into the next part of the discussion, and I promise it was not planned, I'm going to drill into effectiveness. And maybe it's because I did make an assumption that you would be focused on effectiveness when you had to make your picks. And those three pillars are people, process, and technology. Now, obviously, if we look at the process side of things, it is, you know, when it comes to AMLA, it is around independence of the function. You know, how do you do your KYC diligence? How do you do your enhanced due diligence? What is the risk-based approach? Because insurance companies have more and more complex, you know, insurance products, different areas of insurance, reinsurance, maritime, automotive. And also when you look at the Philippines as well, you have more than 10% of your population that are actually overseas expat population, whether that's Pan-ASEAN, regionally or elsewhere globally. So some of those beneficiary transactions and whatnot cross-border become also more complex and require more of a robust risk-based approach. Now, obviously, when you then come into the people aspect, this is where I really identify this, and especially with the audience that we have in this discussion here, being C-levels, executives of large insurance companies in the business, you know, a board of director management oversight from our experience as a regulatory technology provider and working with the community, it really has for us really helped drive that culture of compliance. And that being not a tick box exercise, but coming back to overall effectiveness, overall understanding, and getting more of that buy-in across the organization as well. What's really interesting is that the IC in the Philippines, it really shows where you have regulators that are looking to work with you, we believe. And many of you have talked about this, where you have that dialogue. They are, even as part of their guidelines, circulars, they're trying to encourage you to actually have that as part of your process around AMLA. And actually have more of that ongoing training and education, which many of the talkers from earlier have actually discussed. So if I go into maybe trying to round off the discussion with a couple more questions for the panel, if we move into this more specific piece of effectiveness, I'd just be really keen to understand from yourselves, you know, what has worked well for you as an organization at this point in driving that broader culture of compliance? And also equally, has that senior management or board of director or C-level oversight been an important part of that? That would be my first question. Do you maybe want to start with this one this time around?
Okay, so for us, it's a combination of two things. Number one is tone from the top, and number two is an effective compliance awareness program. So we consider this combination important to successfully create a risk and compliance culture within the organization. Tone from the top also does not involve only the board and senior management, but also middle management, because they are actually the ones running and directing the business operations with their staff and ensuring that adherence to local laws and regulations are observed and maintained. As to the compliance awareness program, we believe that for it to be effective, it should be timely and comprehensive. It should aim to instill in everyone in the organization ownership of their respective roles and responsibilities for compliance. So those are the two things that work well for us.
Thanks for sharing, Rahul, maybe I'll pass it back to you. Is there anything else that you would like to share on that, around that culture of compliance and what your organization has been through so far?
Yeah, sure, Jonathan. I think for me, very similar to what was shared, tone from the top is important. But I think what has really worked for us is the education of the people in the organization. In my view, process and technology is important, but behind both these two are actually people. And hence, for the people to appreciate why all this is being done is more important. I think we have believed that when we moved our focus from what needs to be done to the why aspect, we could get more engagement with the people and ensure that these people who are behind these processes and technology build these two things in a very robust fashion. The second thing that has worked is that we've invested a lot in our risk and in our compliance teams over the past few years. I mean, if I was to see the number of the quality and the number of people on both these aspects have grown multiple fold. And what we've done is that we've had these people be involved in the business, on the business side early, in the whole process. And not just at the end for them to give their views, but to ensure they're as much a part of any new idea generation, any new initiative or any new process change, so that the insights from these experts is incorporated quite early, and hence we don't end up spending a lot of management time in building things up and then figuring out, oh, we kind of forgot about the compliance side of it. So I think these are the two aspects which has worked very well for us in AXA. And just to summarize, educating all our employees around the why, and then ensuring that we have our compliance and our risk people involved in some of these business initiatives quite early, and not towards the end, just from a compliance sign-off point of view.
Thanks, Rahul. And just before I pass the same question to yourself, Lee Hao, from the first, from from yourself, Rahul, it's very clear that you see tone from the top being important, but it's very clear about not just having a message from the top and not involvement from the actual functional experts themselves,
yes,
level management. So it's really more of a top-down and bottom-up approach is what I'm hearing from the both of you. And interesting, just on your last point, Rahul, I think you mentioned, you as an organization have made that investment in the risk and the compliance functions as well, right? As part of these three pillars of people, process, technology, which would hopefully come back to empowering people, which is your most important part. Now, coming to you, Lee Hao, I know you mentioned earlier yourself, even if on efficiency, you said, it's probably one that would be the least priority because it's not the time now to stop investing. So, maybe that's a segue into what you might share here, but I think it comes back to that point here around that continued investment, which will also help the people part of the process too. Would you want to share some thoughts on this point as well, Lee Hao?
I think Jonathan, he had to leave for some meeting. So
yeah,
I just saw a text pop up in my...
My apologies.
Yeah, Lee Hao has left, but I think Mr. Roman, Terroy Roman may be able to answer that one.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Terroy, I did not realize that I think I've maybe cut you out of the conversation, so apologies for that.
Jonathan, apologies. Can you just restate the question, please?
Yeah, it was really coming back to that first point around, the journey of your organization in developing that culture of compliance, a strong culture of compliance. And where's it been so far, and has that management overview been important as well?
Yes, it's a journey, not the just destination. So year on year, the journey's destination always changes. So the key there is what already been mentioned by the others. It's really at the tone at the top. But what we have observed is the tone at the top goes through the communication channel of compliance, or the anti-money laundering officer. And it's also our directors who keep up and read up to pace with developments, not only locally, but also abroad. So there are many observations that they see, and the farthest thing that we want to happen as either the corporate secretary or the chief compliance officer or the anti-money laundering officer is you're asked a question by a director and you're not familiar with the developments in abroad or in the Philippines. So it's a test and retest whether both are aware with what's going on. Latest development, of course, is in June, we had our gray list, and immediately at the board meeting, the first question of the director is, what does that mean? And then they test you on what you understand from that. Thank you, Jonathan.
No, thank you very
Jonathan?
much, Fisher. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up now, I believe.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights. And look, we didn't get a time to answer the last question, but to be honest, I think you actually all discussed it as part of your questions. And it was really around, on the back of COVID, you know, technology has been there as part of a pillar, but how much has it really added to that people and process element? And for sure, you've definitely brought that into the conversation already as part of your responses. But, you know, I'm mindful of time. I think we are overrunning a little bit. But thank you very much to my panelists. I'll hand it over to Ida now, who will probably take it to the next topic.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. And again, you know, this industry, we may be competitors, but there is competition. That is, industry is united in managing challenges faced by the industry. Thank you so much, Jonathan, our distinguished guest, Raul of AXA. We have M of PruLife, Lihao, and Roman of FWD. Now, after talking about threats and containment, we go to performance, key results, especially when it comes to fulfilling the expectations of our clients. Our next speaker will discuss the importance of delivering efficient, results-oriented compliance in a cost-conscious environment. Let's please welcome Mr. Douglas Wolfson, Director of Financial Crime Compliance Strategy of Lexisnexis Risk Solutions, to be joined later on by the reactor's I hope I pronounce it properly, Antig, Head of Legal and Compliance of Singlife, Abet Adversalo, the Chief Innovation Officer of Malayan Insurance, and Ron Ramos, the Chief Actuary of AXA Philippines. Again, let us welcome Mr. Douglas Wolfson. Over to you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I really appreciate you all taking a bit of time out of your day during lunch to have this conversation. I think it's something that needs to happen in many more places around the region much more often. And so even though we can't be together in a room, I think it's fantastic, you know, as Johnny was mentioned, that we have the ability to do this to do this through technology. I think it's great, and that's important because that's the subject of this part of the discussion. I think there were so many valuable points that were brought up as to the effectiveness E. It's so key. So many people mentioned tone from the top as something that's important, and to me, I agree. Having been in a risk management role previously in my career, having that tone from the top is essential, because otherwise the compliance functions, the risk functions just get run over by the business, and nothing good can come of that. So I think it's incredibly valuable, and it's great to hear, and allows us to pivot into the next discussion about how do we be effective, and we can be effective through really that efficiency. And if I could ask you, Ida, to bring up the slides. Just onto the net. Great. I don't know if I can. Oh, can I move it forwards? Sorry. Move it. Apologies. There we go. That's great. If we could just move on to the next slide, fantastic. So Johnny went through the 3's, and I want to talk a little bit here about efficiency, but before we move on to the core of the subject, And really the quote there says it all, right? It enables effective compliance in a cost-effective manner. This is so hugely important. There are, hundreds of billions to trillions of dollars of financial crime in the global financial system. A lot of that comes through insurance. And it's really difficult to find because although trillions seems like a lot, there are hundreds of trillions of dollars of global trade. So you really, the analogy that I like to use is that you're not looking for a needle in a haystack. You're looking for a very specific needle in a pile of needles. And so this is incredibly difficult to do. And so to be able to do it, we need to have really good technology. We also need to have really efficient technology that helps to drive us forward. And we need to be set up in a way where those processes are well executed. And then we have the right people in place to follow up on them. So I'd like to start the conversation, if we could move on to the next slide, please, with something we call the True Cost of Compliance Survey. And these numbers come specifically from respondents in the Philippine market. So these are Philippine numbers. And it makes it really exciting to have this level of granular data. But what we've found is very simple in doing this survey. We found that companies that spend more on technology spend less overall on compliance. They generally have smaller compliance staffs, and they're generally spending less on their total program for compliance people, for their actual staff in the program, right? So they're spending less per compliance FTE on their total compliance program. It's more efficient, it's more scalable because technology is there. Things like robotic process automation are being used. And that's incredibly valuable because that means that the manual tasks that take a lot of time for people to perform can be very quickly done by the machines. Now, I know your fear here, and it's something that Amor actually brought up in the chat a little bit earlier, which is, well, what about our people? And I think to us, as we do this survey and as we speak to people in financial institutions, as we speak to senior compliance officers, AMLOs, chief compliance officers, COOs, what we find is that the real value is not implementing technology so you can get rid of people. That's actually not the case at all, and it's not what we found, and absolutely not what we would advocate, right? What we find with that technology is that it allows companies to upskill their staff to do more value-added work. You know, we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning. My view is personally that a lot of countries and a lot of markets and a lot of industries are not really there yet to implement machine learning and artificial intelligence yet. But implementing that RPA, the robotic process automation, means that a lot of that work of people sitting at desks and checking whether or not something is a false positive, isn't a false positive, I don't know, we got to check further. A lot of that work can be done by computers. And what that means is that when there's real risk, we can involve the staff, the humans. That's where the real value is, because that artificial intelligence, that machine learning, that's not really at the point where it can deliver that second level, that third level investigation of someone who might be a risky individual, and you really need to dig deeper into their company, into their finances, into the way that they operate. The technology is really good for RPA in that first level alert where it comes up, is this alert connected to the actual person, or is it a false positive? Generally, we find that the RPA is really good at eliminating those first results, those first alerts, and then escalating those second level alerts that really need to be investigated. And then you have those people who've been reskilled to do that and work on those alerts. And that's where we're finding huge value. Again, it's not replacing people with technology, but replacing tasks so that those people can be upskilled and they can deliver significantly more value to your organization. I think it's a really key point, but I think more valuable than hearing it from me is really hearing it from some other organizations in your market to understand really where you see that efficiency coming from and how it can generally be best delivered. So if I could ask you, Ida, to please move on to the next slide while I take a sip of water. And so this is, again, I think the preamble sentence, it's really about adding staff as a short-term solution, say to COVID, right? The amount of onboardings to digital platforms was huge. And so a lot of companies just went out and hired a lot of people. That's not necessarily the best solution when you think about it. It's really about empowering your own people while bringing in better and more technology. So I guess if I could start, and I apologize, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Air, if I could ask you to please share with us your organization's current approach to process and technology, maybe we can get some local views on the subject.
Great. Okay. So hi, everyone. We're currently the newest insurance player in the market, but we're trying to make things digital per se. So we're making use a lot of APIs, and we're trying to get a straight through process end to end for clients. So currently we have partnered with GCash, and the ideal scenario is, for example, if I'm a client and I'm going to purchase an insurance product online, all I have to do is to access my account in GCash and make all my transactions there for payments and choose my desired insurance products. And my personal information will be auto-populated from GCash information to our Singlife microsite. So in a way, we're eliminating unnecessary intermediaries. Like, for example, in a typical insurance market, you have an insurance agent that interviews your client and then fills up the forms for them and stuff like that. So there are errors that might happen, and then the forms will have to go back and forth. So we're wasting time and resources. So that's one of the things that we're trying to solve through API integration with other companies' systems.
I think that's fantastic, and that really is the two of the key points, which is APIs are the future. A company like Amazon, which is now a global behemoth, doesn't allow different systems to connect to each other in any way other than API calls. And so it's hugely valuable because it allows you that flexibility. And then the end-to-end processing, we're huge advocates of, because it ensures that human error element is taken out of it from the beginning, especially if, say, you can scan an ID card, or you can scan a passport. That information is taken directly, double-checked, of course, and then it's fed through the system, end to end. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Abed, could I ask you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just correct my title. My CIO stands for Chief Information Officer. Somebody else plays the role of Chief Innovation Officer in Malayan. Now, I'd like to share with you our experience when it comes to the use of RPA in our company. Similar to the banks, insurance companies work with a lot of documents, and we have very high volume, routine, repetitive processes that require very minimal human judgment. And that's where we chose to apply RPA initially. For example, in our company, we're using robotics to handle the some of the tasks involving a form of regulatory compliance, like the issuance of official receipts for the payments that we receive. And now we are receiving payments in bulk because we have partnered with digital wallets and banks as well for our clients to make online payments. And we have to make sure that those payments are individually receipted. But rather than having the humans do the typing and issuance of, say, 100 policies in a single remittance from the bank, we use the robots. For example, in our case, we use one of the robots. We call him Batman. He's assigned to do it. And the reason why we call him Batman, it's because of the Filipino expression we call bahala na si Batman, or let Batman take care of it. And that leaves the humans to handle the exceptions, as you pointed out, and analyze further certain outliers that are determined in the process. And that means more meaningful work for our employees rather than doing all those repetitive tasks. But for the local non-life insurance industry in the Philippines, companies like ours, perhaps, we have already been using RPA and some form of AI and machine learning. But I don't think everyone already in the industry has adopted those technologies. There might be smaller companies that would have issues when it comes to cost, infrastructure, or the technical capabilities of people that would implement it in their respective organizations. And I would think that that's where InsurTech, RegTech, and Digital Pilipinas can come in and help us as an industry. Just for example, our chairman of PIRA mentioned one of the challenges is data gathering, where member companies are required to submit certain sets of data to our regulators. Maybe InsurTech and RegTech can come in and provide a platform sponsored perhaps by our regulators. And we as members can just submit our data in whatever raw form that we have them, and let the robotics or RPA handle the transformation and consolidation the way the regulators want it. Thank you.
I think you raised some fantastic points, and to sort of start with your last point about what is almost a data utility for the entire industry, I think is so valuable. And I think if the regulators can and the industry organizations can get behind that and support it, it's really important, because we found utilities are successful when the regulators support them and give the full backing to them. And they're less successful when the regulators say, well, we need you to go figure it out, and then you come and tell us, and then we'll decide whether or not it works. If having that involvement from day one of the regulators is so essential that it's key. And another very interesting and valid point that you brought up, which is about cost for smaller companies. It's something that every time that I present the slide that just previously, it's something that's brought up, and it's a question of, yes, it costs more for people over the long run, but that upfront cost of deploying the solutions is greater in a single year than it is, than my staff cost is. And I think what we find is, even for smaller companies, that technology, RegTech, InsurTech companies are providing better and cheaper solutions, number one, I think. And number two, it's allowing for the delivery with, say, multi-year payments and things like that, to spread that cost out so that impact in year one is ensuring, that it's not as big as oh, you have to pay for all the technology and all the services right now. And then, in year 5, 6, 7, don't worry, it'll be less expensive then. I think it's really important that the InsurTech, the RegTech sectors are working closely with those smaller companies to make sure that they're getting delivered the same quality of technology, but in a way that is cost effective to them. Oh, we're getting asked to wrap up. You did mention RPA and AI and ML, so I will just go finally to Ron and ask sort of your view. The both of you so far have sort of discussed the successes and struggles as well. So I guess Ron, you see the questions before you that unfortunately I talk a little bit too much, so we didn't get them. If I could ask your views on these three questions, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so I won't repeat what have been said already. Like the other organizations, our approach to process and technology is to make everything more efficient. COVID has given us a rare opportunity to look at our processes. Number one, to digitize, and there's no real, option. So it's really a good time to increase your adoption, and a lot of organization, I think, were forced to do so. And then, at the same time, there's a bit lull in the business in terms of human resources. That's another opportunity for you to rationalize your human resource within the organization, and then use technology to allow for the increased load going forward. And I think in terms of cost benefit, which most of the organizations would struggle when they look at all of these digitalization projects, this would probably help out. One caution of warning, in AXA, we've done a lot of these processes and we've been very successful at them. But now what we're doing is rationalizing even all of these APIs, all of these links that we've created, all of these multi-platform solutions that we've created, because later on you will be faced with a mesh of technology that you might need to update later on in the future. And we're currently undergoing that. In terms of process, we have to be very efficient, not only in our own internal processes, but also in the delivery of the product. I'm talking about counterparties. These are not only commissions that you pay to agents. These are the fees that you pay to your digitalization platforms, your counterparties to acquire the business. And then lastly, there's also some technology that can be applied to maximize your risk structures, so that you're not only delivering the product more efficiently, but you're also managing the risk from a structure perspective, that there's no over calculation of the risk margin, so to speak. At the end of the day, you'll have, effectiveness for me is more on the result. And what is the objective? I guess to deliver the insurance benefits with a minimal cost, from my understanding. And that goes into the cost of your own organization expense, the commissions and the fees of your counterparties, the risk margins that you have to impose, and lastly, the realistic investor profits. Of course, we're all private entities here, and that is part of the equation. So, and in all of this, technology plays a role. The more you can link and adapt everything together, the better, of course, your organization would function. That's it from my end.
That's fantastic, and I would love to. I think this could probably lead us into a number of different discussions, but unfortunately, at this point, we're going to have to wrap it up here. It is something that I do personally love to discuss. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to discuss them further with you. And thank you very much again for the time.
Thank you. That was excellent. By the way, AI, robotics, they're my favorite topics. So excellent with your presentation, Dog, as well as Jonathan's, the 3 E's, the PPT process, people, technology. And then you discuss also the robotics, process automation, RPA, and artificial intelligence or AI have been able to not only substantially reduce attempts of the crime and doing predictive analytics, it's also supporting compliance. So thus reducing overall expense, normally spent on compliance. So thank you again, Dog. And our reactors, Air of Sing Life, Abed of Malayan, Ron of AXA, and everyone else here that actually have been sharing your insights, particularly this panel in terms of the insights regarding the impact of technology and effectiveness and efficiency. Oh, by the way, Dog, I'm not going to take credit in terms of maneuvering the slides. I'm actually just a guest moderator, but we have efficient people from Geyser Maklang here as well. Okay, so our last keynote speaker will tackle road ahead and what it will take to create a safe environment for compliance that will bring about innovation while reducing our industry exposure to money launderers and terrorism financiers, as well as increasing transparency in all aspects of compliance. Let's welcome Julie, how do I pronounce this? I hope this is correct. Xiao? Oh.
Yes, that's correct.
Xiao, okay. Head of Sales and Financial Crime Compliance for Southeast Asia of Lexisnexis Risk Solutions. To join her in the panel discussion, our panel leaders are Attorney J. Sotero Roman, Legal Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer of FWD. And we have Rogelio Jing Ancheta, IT Business Partner of AIG Insurance Incorporated. Over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Ida. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, Anthony Terrero-Man. Thanks for staying with us till the end. I do hope that you all find some time to enjoy the lunch basket. I saw the picture that Mrs. Jardine shared. It does look very delicious. Unfortunately, Jane is unable to be here as he has another meeting at 2 p.m. So apart from Anthony Teroy, we will open the floor for discussions for all these questions. And some of them I might also ask for, like my colleague Johnny and the dogs for them to share some of advice as well. So if we may have the PowerPoints being shared. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so now coming into the third topic, we are going to look into some current events, and from there to have everyone to share your perspectives on the last but not the least elements of 3E, expandability. So move to the next slide, please. Let's have a quick review. What is expandability? Sorry, can we move to the next slide? Thank you. So what is expandability? It is, if you remember from Johnny's session, it is actually the capability to explain the result of an AML-CFT program and CTT process to regulators. In fact, in my humble opinions, I would say it's not only for regulators. Having expandability also means it will help your company to read the data you collected better, and therefore the analysis will be even more meaningful for risk management. And so what we like to discuss today is about what does expandability means to insurance business and even the Philippines as a country, and how can we enhance such capability with innovative technologies. Next slide, please. So firstly, let's look into the recent news. Crown Global was fined earlier this year by the local regulator in Bermuda for various ML failings. And from BMS response here, you can see some of the failings, including the delayed timing of the verifications, the lack of a record keeping, the independence audit functions missing, etc. So what's interesting is it's not a single event, single incident. If you compare the reasons behind those AML fines recently to those 10 years ago, you start to see more of the cases are associated with the lack of transparency or lack of audit trails. So we can really say that the regulators worldwide now has even higher expectation on the expandability. It's like what Chairman Allen also mentioned earlier, right? The capability for systems to capture the accurate data. So my questions to Teroy, as an insurer, what are the challenges you have seen or foreseen to comply with such stringent requirements, especially on the regulatory transparency?
The question, Julie, is the credibility of your AI or ML. So the question is, for example, without favoring one provider against another provider. For example, when you use Dow Jones or Bridger or World Check to do your name screening, is that more credible versus your in-house name screening tool? So when there's a finding or a breach of a name that has either an AML or a terrorist finance sanction, and they're in your system, whether reported as a CTR or STR, how do you explain to the regulator that you've done your due diligence, and then you show your due diligence as signed by your own IT head, and it's not one of those that are ISOs, or it's not one of those plug and play, it's not one of those with that level of notoriety to define credibility. Of course, the second part of the question on explainability is within each of providers that assist in money laundering and terrorist financing, what filters or what level of, is it an 80, 70, or 100% filtering mechanism that you use? If you look at our regulations, there's no specific tool that is required by the regulator. It simply says, have a tool. But within those tools, there are different metrics. And within those metrics, you have that discretion to put 75, to put 80, to put 60. So those are the issues of explainability. How do you explain to the regulator that you've done due diligence? So if you do 85 on the name screening versus 70, can you show that you have done your due diligence? When the regulators comes to you and says, you should have done 85 or you should have done 75, what is your answer? So those are the challenges that we foresee. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Anthony Terry, and I cannot agree with you more, because this is definitely what we've been hearing, not only from our customers in Philippines, to be honest, I think in every single country, right? That everyone, every company, not even talking about different vendors, but like you say, you also have your in-house system, right? So with this assumption, then how can you bring a standardizations when you explain to your regulator? So it's definitely one of the challenges we see very common in all the organizations. Perhaps for this topic, we can also invite Chairman Ellen. Can you also share with some of your view, from the different angle, more from like the regulator's point of view? What do you see that all the challenges that the insurance company has been sharing with you?
Hi. Okay.
Sorry to call you out of blue.
No problem. No problem. I think it's a good question. Again, I go back to the challenge on data. Currently, the regulator, for example, is asking insurance companies to submit their premiums and claims registers, and a number of the members have expressed concern. Number one, on the deadline, that it's too tight. Secondly, they don't have the capability to capture the data. Many of the data elements or the records are actually in hard copies rather than in a digital format. So I think that's one. And maybe also the challenge in that process is that the companies, when they submit the data, they also don't understand how the regulators will use the data. And therefore, the level of appreciation for the importance of the data that will be submitted is also low. And somehow that also contributes to the challenge why it's difficult for companies to get incentivized to send the data to the regulators.
Understand. Thanks for sharing. And so I think what occurs to me, if I understand both of you correctly, is actually about the communications, right, between the insurance and also the regulators, because it is the fact that every company is using different kind of solutions. And I think from regulators' perspective, it's really not to ask them to provide exactly the same answer, but just be able to explain, the methodology or the screening algorithms you've been used within various of the solutions. Okay, now probably we can move to the next slide. Yeah, now let's look into another recent event which has been, I think, brought up by many people in this luncheon earlier, right? So all of you are aware that the Philippines was added to FATF grade list in the recent evaluation. But what I want to emphasize here, we also saw like Bangkok Central respond swiftly with a commitment that they will complete all the action plans and have Philippines to be delisted before the next evaluation. So I think we should definitely give the credits to local regulators in the Philippines to take this commitment seriously and work on these challenges. And with the discussion we have today so far, I really believe that the insurance sector will be the one working collectively, helping the Philippine regulator and leading the change to make the Philippines as a safe haven for insurance regulatory and compliance. So from this angle, and Tony Tarek, would you mind to sharing with us, so what are the AML enhancements you plan to roll out for your company as the next step, especially in improving the regulatory transparency?
Julie, is that directed at me? I didn't capture. So you.
Yes, direct to you.
Okay, okay. The thing with the gray listing, even before the gray listing was set up, the Insurance Commission through the Anti-Money Laundering Council have already issued several activities that would lead to us either complying with the the FATF or not being in the gray list. I think the gray list is an accidental hit that happened because just before February, we were just a few days away from including realtors and gaming operations. So I think it's coming more from that rather than any other thing. Second, just on the gray list, it's not an issue of technical compliance. It's an issue of effective compliance. And that's where we have to be in. Now, to answer directly your question, one of the things that we're already doing is the digitization of our customers. And that's actually a requirement by the Insurance Commission. That will easily show the transaction history or the transaction relationship between the life company and that particular client. So to answer that just quickly, the digitization of our client records is one of the things that we're doing. We have other activities, but because this is a public forum, so those are more proprietary than anything else. Thank you, Julie.
Definitely understand. Thanks, Roy. So perhaps for these questions, I would also like to maybe ask my colleague, Doc. How about, I mean, from, you are the strategic consultant from our side, and for this, Philippines being added into the FATF grade list, what's your view on that? And is there any of advice that you will give to, all attendees today?
Absolutely. So when we look at sort of what's needed to get off that gray list, and as you've mentioned, sort of the technological enhancements, the regulatory clarity of delivering on the processes. Again, we find, as we were discussing in the last segment, technology is very good in helping these solutions, because if you're looking for, as I mentioned in the last session, a needle in a very specific needle in a stack of needles, having all that data, having the correct data, making sure those end-to-end processes and it's stored correctly in databases. This is good for you to be able to be more efficient, but it's also good because you can show the regulators exactly what they need to see. And when you file your SARs, your STRs, you have all of that data right there sitting for them. And so those are the types of enhancements that once they're implemented will, that's standard globally. And so those are the types of enhancements that will move forward and sort of improve the situation, with the Philippines and the FATF and the APG.
Thanks, Doug, and I agree with you. And I think we should always see this from a positive perspective, right? Because I mean, the Philippines was not the first one to experience such circumstance. Like before, we also have Pakistan within the gray list, and we also have been helping our customers to work on or to overcome all of these obstacles along the way. Okay, so now I believe we still have a few minutes left that allows us to discuss our last questions. That's fantastic. Can we move to the next slide, please? So these questions actually links back to previous sessions when Doc mentioning about the AI, right? I mean, AI is the hot topic everyone talks about nowadays. Ida also just mentioned she loves this topic. So actually, the perspective we're going to discuss here is how does regulators see it when FIs, financial institutions apply it on financial crime compliance? And I would say most of the regulators are supportive. I mean, MS in Singapore is one of the great examples, right? You can see that we just directly quote what they say. As you can see, they are definitely being supportive. And of course, some regulators are more neutral toward that. However, I think for regulators, regardless of their stance on this topic, they do all have one requirement in common, I would say, that is the auditability and the expandability. So did the machine do what it was supposed to do? Can you explain the decision making in a human readable format? These are the questions regulators are eager to find the answers. So now I also want to throw these questions to you to open the questions to everyone. What's your view on using AI for compliance? Do you think the decision-making outputs are explainable and sufficient enough to meet the regulatory requirements? And again, I would like to invite Tony Teroy maybe to share your view on this first, and then we can open the floor for discussion.
This is a first world country regulator, MAS, and the Insurance Commission is part of the Philippines. And we also have the Supervisory College where they can have exchanges. So I'm looking at the Insurance Commission regulator as coming into that level of readiness together with our Anti-Money Laundering Council. But I would hasten to add, Julie, that it's early days. And we will just have to wait and see and monitor globally how artificial intelligence is used by our counterparts, especially those where the IC meets at the Supervisory College of Regulators. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Devin. I think it's not only for like sectors, right? For different countries, we are all in a different stage of this topic. I know that I have like around 3 minutes left. Actually, I want to also, check with the Ida. Ida, what's your view on this? If you don't mind sharing.
Sorry, I suppose I'm the Ida that you're referring to. Okay.
But I'm still very curious to understand
part of the panel, but yeah, okay. I'm very much into AI. In fact, in my other part of my So anyhow, in my views on AI in terms of the compliance, well, first and foremost, it's not cheap. So we do have a lot of insurance companies that at the moment you're talking about partly survival, and should you actually invest? I'm for investments, definitely in AI, because it provides you that predictive analytics. It provides you that I always say prevention is better than cure. And when it comes to risk management, if AI can help you prevent because it can actually do some predictions and can pick up quicker, then it's going to be less hassle for you rather than to go into a problem and solving that, which is a little bit more expensive. So if you can weigh in as presented by Doug, and I love that presentation in terms of this is the cost of AI, but this is the cost of compliance. But more so, if there's a problem, it's going to be even more costly. That becomes crisis management. Could even result to not just for insurance, but any other business to die simply because you've been hacked and it's close to impossible for you to survive. So my point on the AI for compliance and what I think in terms of the output and decision making, I don't think you can survive without it. Certainly it is the future, but the future is now.
Thank you, Ida. And
Thank
I
you.
love that the last one is almost like a slogan. So yeah, I think definitely it's a big question and lots of discussion has been involved. But I think the reason that we really put out good questions here is just want to open the door and open the discussion so everyone can in the luncheon today can also think about it. So I think there are still so many things to talk about, but we are reaching the end of the session. So thank you again, Tiroy, and then everyone for your participation. It was such a pleasure to host this cohort and hear all the great thoughts you generously sharing with us. Now I will hand back to Ida for the close up. Enjoy the lunch, everyone.
Thank you so much, Julie. Taro, you've made some excellent points in terms of Philippines being, lack of a better word, still baby. It's something that we look forward to, but sometimes we have to really manage. But really excellent points that we have to really think about in terms of, it's probably not yet necessary, or we have to weigh in because of the cost-benefit analysis. But thank you. Thank you, Benedict. Thank you, Dog, for joining in this particular session. And just to wrap it up, as technology keeps evolving at a rapid pace, so do cyber crooks, coupled by digital other concerns. Experts have predicted in 2021 alone, cybercrime will cost the global economy staggering $6.1 trillion. With the pandemic serving as a catalyst, cybercrime is expected to soon become the third world's largest economy. To wrap up today's session, we touch on challenges and opportunities of technology and insurance and healthcare, and most important, how we create a safe environment with compliance at its core. While most feel transformation certainly is not cheap, risk associated with it is really more expensive. Top it with reducing other costs of expenses, such as like in compliance. Certainly the technology is the way to go. Which type of technology? It's something we need to weigh on. There's really no need to reinvent the wheel, but to collaborate with experts like Lexisnexis. Thank you for your presentations today. Excellent. Collaboration with FinTech Association of the Philippines, and of course, collaboration with the regulators. In the absence of any regulation, we can do it via Sandbox, which FinTech can assist you with. We're just getting started, and we are excited to hold our next Risky Business Luncheon for the banking industry this coming August. Before we close, may I have final words from co-trustee of FinTech PH and our webinar, the main host of our webinar, Ms. Amor Maclang. May we have final words from you? Sorry, Amor, can't hear you, sorry. Sorry, Amor, no sound. Thank you.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now, thank you.
Great. We were just saying that everything that needs to be said has already been said. And we look forward to working closely, not just with the associations, continuing to be a support group of the associations, insurance associations, and more importantly, we thank Lexisnexis Risk Solutions for bringing us together in the spirit of collaboration and co-opetition. Mabuhay po ang Digital Pilipinas, and we look forward to seeing you in our next get-together in the InsurTech and Health Tech Association. Mabuhay pong lahat. Salamat.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amor.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.